Welcome to week 2 of the F100 build. I suppose the big question this week is, will she run? So let's dive in and see if we can get this old girl back to life. So we've been playing with the engine, seeing if we can get it running, and we're getting a lot of backfiring, which suggests to me that the timing is way out. What we first of all found was we just checked. So on a small block Chevy, from the front back, your pistons are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and they have to be plugged into the distributor at the correct points, and they were all wrong. So I'm not sure what had happened there. Maybe the person was a Ford person because it's the opposite way around. I'm not sure because I didn't check how they were before. We just pulled them all off and connected them to the correct ones. So we now know the firing order is correct. But actually what I think I'm going to do is sort of static time the car, because the engine, because I'm here on my own. So what I'm going to do is turn the engine round so that the timing mark is at top dead center, and I'll check that it is on the firing stroke by checking that the valves are both closed on cylinder 1 by pulling this off, and then I will get to the distributor. So I'm going to do that now. So the timing mark, which you might just be able to see here, there you go, is lined up to top dead center there. So we want to make sure it's on the firing stroke. So I pulled the valve cover off, and you can see that the pistons there are down, so you can see the springs are up, push rods are down, which means they're both closed, which means it's on the firing stroke. So in the 4-stroke cycle, what that would now be doing means that the exhaust and the intake valves are closed, and it should spark to ignite the fuel and air that is in the cylinder at that point. So we know that is top dead center now. Now what we want to make sure is that the distributor is set to top dead center as well. So this is cylinder 1 here. So the rotor underneath should be pointing at this cylinder here. So I'm going to pull the cap off, and we'll have a quick look and see what's going on down there. Okay, the plot thickens. So you can see here, I've pulled the cap off the distributor, and this is the rotor. Cylinder 1, I should have marked before I pulled it off. I'm going to have to put it back on, but it should be here. So this should be pointing around here. So basically it's been installed and it's not been lined up properly. So what I'm going to have to do is, in fact, there might be a small, someone might have marked it off there, perhaps not. I think what I'm going to do is pull out the distributor, clean it up a little bit, work out where number 1 is on here, line it up properly and reinstall it so that it's in the correct firing place, because I think it's never going to run because it's quite far out at the moment. So yeah, I think that needs doing. Righty ho, so I have taken out the distributor, and that was really hard. It was stuck fast and I had to hammer on it to get it out, which wasn't much fun. But I always think, you know, it's just another one of those jobs that now it's moving freely. That's going to make things easier when it comes to timing, and also for the next owner, then it's in better shape. We can make sure it goes back in correctly. So as I said earlier, the rotor was pointing to the wrong point. So it looked like it was firing like cylinder 2 or 3 when it should have been firing 1, and potentially why they'd moved the plugs around. Which is not what you're supposed to do, but maybe they just wanted to see if the engine was running or something like that. So what we're going to do is obviously do a proper job putting it back together. So what I need to do is mark up where cylinder 1 is on the distributor, so I can then offer it back up and make sure that it's in the right place. So the cap on the distributor only goes on one way. So you can see there's a little bit cut out there. The cap then fits on aligned to that, and sorry, that's all kind of arms in the way. So that then aligns like that. And what we know is that this is cylinder 1, where it should be. So what I'm going to do is mark it with a Sharpie just below that. So then when we drop it back in without the cap on, we can align it so that the rotor is pointing at cylinder 1. So when these drop in, take a bit of jiggery pokery for a couple of reasons. One, what you're trying to do is mesh this gear to the timing gear so it rotates slightly. So you often have to sort of start it a couple of things before it drops in. But then also on the bottom, I'm not sure if you can see it, there's a little drive there which drives the oil pump as well. So you need to make sure that's seated in too. And getting it to the perfect position, so this is aligned to rotor 1, the gears are meshing correctly, and it gets into the fuel pump, can take a little bit of jiggery pokery. What you sometimes have to do, and what I'll probably have to do unless I'm extremely lucky, is climb up on top of the engine, look down the hole and turn that gear on the engine to the point that it meshes with this with a screwdriver so that it will drop straight in. So just about lining up those 3 things, making sure the rotor is pointed at cylinder 1. When it's seated, the oil pump is engaged, and then I can pop the cap back on, make sure the leads are in the correct place, and then hopefully it means we are statically timed in the right place roughly. What we'll then have to do is time it. Normally I think small block Chevys, it's about 8 degrees advanced, so it should be sparking 8 degrees in rotation before this, so it sparks before the fuel gets in there. So we'll do that a little bit later, but at least we know it's in the correct ballpark, because it was not even only not in the same ballpark, it was playing a different sport the way it was. So yeah, let's get back in, get it bolted back up, and hopefully we'll be a little bit closer to firing up.
Oh look, Lordy, well look, see what the Lord has done. Look, just look and see what the Lord has done. Ooh, see what the Lord has done. And I know that
Okay, so a bit of jiggery pokery, but we've got the distributor seated. So as you can see, the rotor's now pointing to 1. It's seated in the oil pump, and we're at top dead center. So a much better position than we were before. So I can now throw the cap back on, and then we'll reconnect up the HT leads in the correct order. And hopefully we're kind of certainly more in the ballpark when it comes to timing than we were before. Okay, so that's the distributor plumbed back in now. I pulled all the HT leads off and started all over again to make sure they were all absolutely right, going to the correct place. Reconnect up the vacuum line, all that kind of stuff. So I think what I'm going to do is just give it a go, see if we can get it to fire up. All right, so I have got everything back together and I've tried to start it again and I'm not getting anywhere. If anything, I've gone backwards a bit. I'm pretty confident, like I say now, that the timing is all right. I'm pretty confident we're getting fuel because we're just using a little 12-volt fuel pump that's like a meter away from the carb, so that should be fine. And I think we might have lost spark again, and I'm wondering whether me hammering on the distributor might have rattled something loose. So I'm going to check for spark again. And if I'm not getting it, I think it will be time to actually, again, pull the distributor out and start trying to test it and see why we're not. And if we are getting spark, I'll have to go back to fuel and see what's going on there. So a little bit more investigation because I really want to get this thing running. Every day that it's not running, I get a little bit more anxious about it because the last thing I want to do is end up having to put a new engine in, because basically that's all my potential profit on this project out the window. And it's already costing a lot. I'd say I've spent about £1,500 on parts now. There's bits that I've ordered that you haven't seen yet as well to make sure that the project is complete. So I'm going to dig into it, see if we've got spark, and then do some more investigation because I really want to hear this thing running. Well, I did check for spark and we had lost spark, so I whipped off the distributor and then got to bench testing it. All right, so I'm just bench testing the distributor now. So I've got it off the vehicle, pulled off the top, And what I've done, this sort of 3-pin connector that goes from the coil to the distributor, I've connected, this one is the positive, the sort of brown wire, the red one is the earth. I've just connected up to a battery. And then what I've got is a little test light that I can throw on the 3rd pin. I'll just touch it on there. And then when I spin, so I'm trying to do this with one hand, spin the distributor, can you see that? You can see that it's flashing. So the distributor is functioning properly. So the next thing I'm gonna have to test is the coil. Right, so it seems like the distributor's good. So what I'm gonna do is test the coil. So I pulled the coil out of the top of the distributor cap. And what I need to do is test the primary and the secondary coils for resistance to see if they're showing what they need to show. So I'm going to test is it primary? I can't remember which one's primary or secondary, but I'm going to test the first coil here. So I've just got a cheap multimeter. One of the things you need to do actually is test, I'm not sure if you can see that. Yeah. Just test the resistance when you touch the 2 wires together, because this one's cheap. It's showing 0.8 on the lowest setting. So I need to, 0.7, I need to deduct that from the final reading. So this coil should read about 0.5 ohms of resistance. So I'm going to touch the 2 points across there. Oh, so I can get it. There we go. So we're showing 1.2. So we take the 0.7 off and we're in the right place, 0.5. Then I need to dial it up to 20k, and I'm going to check the other coil winding, which I have to do using the earth here and this point here. So this should read around 8 point something. So yeah, touch one on there and then one on that earth wire there. 8.6. So that seems okay. So it seems like the coil is okay as well, which means potentially the distributor is fine despite having taken a wallop. So I am going to put it back together. What I did notice when I was pulling this apart was that these cables were quite loose, like they'd come off. So I wonder whether that might be it. So I am going to throw it back together, throw it back on the truck and try again. And I'll check that it's still getting 12 volts to it before I do anything and fire a parts cannon at it. So fingers crossed, it might work. Who knows? Okay, so distributor's back on. All back together, all the leads are back on. I've checked that it's getting 12 volts. Like I say, maybe those little leads that weren't connected were all it was. So I'm going to check now again if it's got spark. Let's see if I can. See if I can show you. Off we go. Holy moly. Think we're going to have a runner. She runs! No way, idling as well. Oh, we have a runner. Woo! Bit more advanced, I reckon. But we could be there. He's running. Just needs to watch your timing a bit. So now she runs, and yeah, it'll just be a case now really of connecting up a proper fuel supply, getting it idling correctly and all that kind of stuff. And I'm waiting for a fuel pump as well. So it's a bit frustrating when you're waiting for parts, but something that has just arrived is the brake master cylinder. So I think while I'm sort of, rather than kicking around, I'm gonna change that out. So quite straightforward, undo these 2 bolts here, undo those 2 bolts there, pull it out, pop the new one in, and then we can bleed the system and hopefully we'll have some brakes. I think one of the things I get asked a lot about is, you know, people are really sort of reluctant to work on cars themselves, but you know, I really believe that most of it is just nuts and bolts, you know, wiring, which as long as you can use a multimeter and see if something's getting 12 volts, then that's half of the battle. You don't have to be a genius to do this stuff. You know, something like this, 4 bolts, doing the reverse. Anyone could do it.
Death come creeping in the road, and I know that my time ain't long. Oh death, down that lonesome road. Death, oh death, yeah, down that lonesome road.
Ugh, looking pretty manky. So, annoyingly, the new brake master cylinder did not come. Did not come with a new push rod. So, I'm gonna have to break it off the clip that's in there and give this a clean up because we'll reuse it. I think it should still be up to the job. Yeah, so I'll do that now. Ta-da! In a jiffy, cleaned up, good as new. Probably better than new actually, because they probably made them with better steel back then. So I'm going to just jam it up that, bolt that back to that, and then we can put some brake fluid in it and see if we can get some brakes moving. Okay, so I'm going to bleed the new master cylinder now. Look how shiny it is. So I got the push rod in there, which is good. Looking all right. So the first thing you do is just fill it up about 3/4 full with brake fluid. And you basically just have to wait for it to start dripping out of the outlets, which might take a few minutes. So yeah, let's sit and wait. I'll fast forward this bit for you. Right, so the front one's starting to drip now a bit, so I'm going to put this plastic bung in the front one just to seal that one up, and then we'll wait until the other one starts to do the same. I do find it sometimes helps to just sort of give the piston a little push, just to kind of get things started a little bit. I'll give that a minute. Right, a few minutes later, longer than I'd have liked, we're starting to get it dripping out of this rear cylinder as well, so I'm going to plug that one too, and then we can start the process of bleeding it, which basically just means we cycle the push rod, the pedal if you like, and just make sure there's no air coming out. You can see there's a few bubbles there. Just keep doing it almost basically until you cannot push the pedal in, then you know that it's bled. Ooh, gosh, I suppose it's not bad for your skin. Brake fluid, eh? It's getting hard to push now. Oh. Yeah, I think we can say that's a solid pedal. So what I'll do, throw the lid back on it and we can reinstall it on the vehicle. Off goes the Falcon. It's going to Fife in Scotland, so abroad in a sense. But yeah, good to see it go off to a new home, someone who's going to love it. Really enjoyed doing that one, really loved that car, so bon voyage, Falcon. Right, on she goes. Dogs look all right. Oh, look how shiny. The good thing with doing this now, I suppose, is that it's all bunged up, so it's nice and easy to install without worrying about getting brake fluid everywhere. But I'm not really sure how necessary it was for me to bench bleed the brake master cylinder. It is kind of best practice, but I am going to vacuum bleed the entire system to get rid of any old brake fluid anyway, so it probably wasn't necessary. But like I say, best practice, it'll speed up the bleeding process. And also, if you, God forbid, are using this as a how to, if you ever want to replace a brake master cylinder without, you know, having to bleed the whole system. That's basically how you do it. You do it like that, and then you don't have to worry about bleeding the whole system. You can just replace it, and then that's it done. Let's get these bolts done up. A bit harder to reach with this than you want. So now what I can do, let's go inside the cab of the vehicle, reinstall the push rod to the pedal, and then we can come forwards, install these lines, and then we can start to bleed the system. Okay, so that's the push rod connected now back to the brake pedal. I also spotted there's a brake switch here, brake light switch, which was on the wrong way. So I'll just put that back on the right way. So hopefully that will help us again further down the line a bit. As you can see, there's a bit of a mess of wiring down here that I'm going to have to start tackling as well. But the good news is now that is on and it's plugged, the brake pedal is solid. So we know that that master cylinder is bled correctly. And now we can go and bleed the whole system and hopefully maintain a nice solid brake pedal, which means we'll have a good braking system. Okay, so that's the brake lines run to the master cylinder now. But what I actually noticed, I don't know if you can see it down there, just where I'm shining the light, there's a brake proportioning valve, which will allow us to adjust the bias of braking power to the front and the rear. I guess as part of setting up the front disc brake system, they wanted to have more adjustments on how the brakes were biased, because obviously you've got stronger brakes to the front. So that'll be probably something that we'll have to configure a bit later if it's not been done already and see how it brakes. It's brake bleeding time. So what I'm going to do is bleed the whole system using a vacuum bleeder because I'm on my own. I don't have someone to pump the pedal. So what you basically do is hook up this vacuum lead to the bleed nipple here, crack that off, and it will then draw the brake fluid through the system and out this way. And basically I'll watch this pipe and make sure there's no bubbles coming through, and also make sure that the brake fluid coming out looks good. So I'm probably going to draw it all through rather than just looking for the bubbles. I'm going to look for crappy old brake fluid as well. And then when clear, nice stuff coming through and no bubbles comes through, then I can turn it off, crack it off, and then we'll have a nicely bled system. So the way you do it is you bleed from the furthest away from the master cylinder, so the front driver's side of this vehicle. So I start here, go to the rear driver's side, front passenger side, then front driver's side, and then that's the whole system done, all flooded with nice new brake system, and then we should be able to stop. All right, so I'm not sure if you can see that, but there's a ton of air in there. So I'm going to give it a really good bleed through, make sure it's completely clear and coming through. And then what I'll also have to do at the same time is just make sure that over here, the master cylinder will start to drain down with brake fluid. So I'll have to just keep topping it up, make sure it doesn't run too low. Okay, so the front brakes are bled up, sorry, the rear brakes, and I've come to do the front passenger side, and this bleed nipple is all chewed up. A familiar tale, I'm sure. You can see that when the calipers have been painted red, they've painted that as well, and now it won't come off. So I've had to order a 9mm long reach socket, which I didn't have to hammer over it to get it off. So that's annoying. It's kind of stopped me in my tracks a bit. So hopefully it's Friday now. So hopefully that will arrive today and I'll get it done before the weekend, because for completion, I'd like to have the brakes done for this video. So yeah, we'll have to see how the day gets on. In the meantime, what I'm going to do is replace the fuel pump. So it was only 25 quid, and I figure the state of the fuel system, I might as well put a nice new one on, ready for when the tank is all nice and clean. So I'm going to whip that off. It's only, again, 2 bolts, undoing the lines and popping the new one on. And another job well done for the new owner. So there she is, new fuel pump in. I've run a new fuel line out the output, the output, I suppose, to the carburetor already. This fuel line I'm going to replace as well. I just want to make sure it's all nice and and new. So I'll pull that off, put a new one on there, and we might look at putting a filter in there now as well, because I guess we want it to be in before the pump, so we're not getting any rubbish in there. So yeah, that's a job that's sorted. And now I think, again, I'm sort of killing time really before finishing bleeding the brakes. But down here, we have the gear linkage. So you can kind of see it needs to connect to this, which goes up to the column shift up in the cab. I've put the shift to park up there, and I've pulled this to park as well, so you can hear, you can click it through the gears, and you can see it's not quite long enough to connect. So whether that's something that's I guess the previous owner just not got around to doing, or what, or maybe when they did the conversion, because presumably the gearbox, I haven't actually had a look yet, but I would assume it's something like a TH350 if it's paired to a small block Chevy, so we'll have a look. But what I need to do is obviously extend this to there. Now this is a threaded bar, so what I'm going to do is mark off where we need it to be, then I'm going to pull it off at the shifter end, and then I'll try and give it a good clean and then wind it out to the correct place, reconnect it, and then we will have changing. So I've checked the transmission oil and it seems nice and red, and it seems like it's up to level, so fingers crossed the transmission is healthy. So if we've got that connected, we have a running engine, it means hopefully, especially if the brake's done as well, that we should be able to actually move the thing, which will be very exciting, something I'm really looking forward to doing. So yeah, I'm going to pull that out and get it to the right length, and then we will hopefully have gears. Okay, we have linkage. So as it happens, the end down there, when I went down to take it off, where obviously on the end there must have been a circlip or something, must have broken. So they've welded it down the bottom, which is fine. It's strong and it moves freely, so that's fine, but it meant I couldn't take it off. So I just had to clean up the thread and turn it in situ. But as much as it was laborious and an awkward position to be in, it's done, and we're now connected up so that we can change gears. So that concludes another week working on the F100. It's been a week of triumphs and getting the engine to run. It's funny how something as small as a couple of wires in the distributor was the difference between success and failure. But I think we've ironed out everything there. And I'm happy to say the socket I was waiting for did arrive, so I've now been able to bleed all the brakes. Though I am going to replace the brake nipples on the front too, so the next owner doesn't have a problem that I had getting them undone. So yeah, what a cool place to be in. We have a running engine, it brakes, we've connected up the gear linkage. So in theory, it should work now. It should go backwards and forwards. So huge strides made, and a lot more stuff to do next week as well. Once again, thank you so much for watching. I hope it's been interesting or informative, or whatever you call this thing that I'm doing. It's been a real pleasure to work on this vehicle. It's been a real pleasure to share it with you. Working here on my own, it's nice to sort of have just a little window into the outside world, and your comments and suggestions, like I say, are massively appreciated. And if you would take a moment to like, to subscribe, to maybe share with your friends. I don't think there's many people doing American car builds here in the UK. So actually, if you know of any YouTubers who are doing it, then please drop a link to them, because I'd love to be watching them too. It feels like, I say, progress not quite as much in week one in a way, but these things kind of go like that. They're a bit up and down. You wait for parts and stuff like that. And it can be a bit frustrating, but I end the week on a high, and very much looking forward to cracking on again on Monday and getting this thing one step closer to being back on the road. Have a great week, and I'll catch you next Sunday.